The road did not look dangerous. There were no sharp curves cutting through the landscape, no sudden changes in elevation, no visual signals that would force caution or demand immediate attention. It was the kind of road people trust without question, where movement becomes automatic, where direction feels controlled, where nothing suggests that the next second could be different from the last. Everything aligned with expectation. The surface was steady. The path was clear. The motion was smooth. That is what made the moment deceptive. Because when everything appears stable, awareness relaxes. Not out of negligence, but out of familiarity. The human mind adapts quickly to patterns. When nothing changes, it stops looking for change. When movement remains consistent, it assumes continuity. That assumption creates comfort, and comfort reduces urgency. Inside the car, that comfort existed. Not spoken, not acknowledged, but present. She sat beside him, her posture relaxed, her attention moving between the road ahead and the quiet rhythm of the moment. There was no tension in her body, no indication that anything required adjustment. Her breathing matched the pace of the drive, steady, controlled, aligned with what felt like a predictable journey. Nothing felt wrong. The car continued forward. Engine stable, speed consistent, direction unchanged. Until something shifted, not visibly at first, not in a way that could be immediately understood, but in a way that disrupted the connection between control and movement. The tires lost grip, slightly, then completely. The change was sudden, but not loud, not dramatic enough to immediately signal danger, just enough to break alignment. The steering no longer responded the way it should. The connection between input and direction weakened, then disappeared. What had once been a controlled motion became something else entirely, something unstable, something that no longer followed intention. That is when the moment began to collapse. The car veered, not smoothly, not predictably, but with a force that did not match the road. The direction shifted without permission, pulling away from the path it had been following seconds before. The balance of the vehicle changed, its weight redistributing in a way that could not be corrected instantly. She felt it, a slight movement at first, then more. Her body reacted before her mind could fully process it, tension replacing calm, awareness rising to meet a situation that had already begun to move too fast. The road ahead no longer aligned. The edges of control had been crossed. The moment had changed. He felt it too, not as surprise, but as recognition. Because when control breaks, the body knows before the mind explains it. The vehicle continued to shift, the tires struggling against the surface, the friction inconsistent, the motion unstable. The sound changed, subtle at first, then sharper, carrying a signal that something was no longer functioning as it should. The car moved sideways, not fully, but enough. Enough to break certainty, enough to create risk. The distance ahead shortened. The environment closed in. What had been open space became a narrowing path, where correction needed to happen immediately, where delay would remove options entirely. The steering responded, but not enough. The input came, but the output did not match. That is what defines loss of control. Not the absence of action, but the failure of action to create the expected result. The car continued forward, but no longer aligned with the road. The moment reached its critical point. The space for correction disappeared. The margin for error collapsed. What could have been adjusted seconds before could no longer be fixed now. And that is when inevitability begins. The road that had looked safe no longer mattered, because the car was no longer following it. It was moving within its own momentum now, guided by forces that did not respond to intention, carried forward by speed that could not be reduced in time. The outcome had not happened yet, but it had begun. And in that exact second, before impact, before consequence, before everything that follows loss of control becomes real, there was only one thing left. A moment, small, precise, and about to decide everything. Before the moment broke, he'd already been defined, not by what he could do, but by what others believed he could not. His body told a story people assumed they understood. The wheelchair, the stillness, the absence of movement where movement was expected. It created an image that felt complete to those who saw him from the outside. Limited, dependent, restricted. That is how they saw him, not because they meant harm, but because they never looked deeper. And when someone is defined by limitation, expectation disappears. People stop imagining what that person could do in a moment of urgency. They remove them from scenarios that require action, speed, control. They assume that when something goes wrong, that person will not be the one to change it. He lived within that assumption, not resisting it, not correcting it, just existing in a space where nothing was expected from him when it came to moments like this. Inside the car, that perception remained, unspoken, but present. He sat beside her, positioned differently. His body adapted to a reality that had already removed certain forms of movement from his life. His lower body did not respond. His range of motion did not match what most would rely on in a situation that required immediate physical reaction. And that is what made the moment so critical. Because when control is lost, people rely on what they believe they have. Speed, reflex, full mobility. He did not have those. At least not in the way others understood them. The car began to lose alignment. The shift in motion was immediate. The stability of the drive disappeared. And in that exact second, the assumptions about him should have held. This was not a situation designed for someone like him to act. Not enough time, not enough physical freedom, not enough control. That is what anyone observing would believe. But assumption does not define reality. The car veered further. The direction no longer matched the road. The margin for correction was gone. The moment had moved beyond normal response. And that is where perception begins to fail. Because when everything breaks, what people think they know becomes irrelevant. He did not freeze. He did not hesitate. He did not wait for confirmation that the situation had become dangerous, because he had already recognized it. Faster than expectation, faster than assumption. His awareness was not limited by what his body could not do. It was sharpened by everything he had learned to compensate for. Because when movement is restricted, perception becomes precise. Attention becomes focused. Reaction becomes intentional. He saw the alignment break. He understood the trajectory. He recognized where the car was going before it fully got there. And that gave him something no one expected him to have: timing. The moment was narrowing. The space for action almost gone. The situation no longer allowed for hesitation. And yet, he remained the one no one would expect to act. That is what made the next second impossible to predict. Because the man defined by his limits was about to move in a way that ignored all of them. It did not take long. It did not need to. The moment the car broke alignment, the situation changed from controlled to critical. And in that exact transition, awareness had to form instantly or not at all. There was no time to analyze, no space to question, no margin to hesitate. The shift in motion carried everything he needed to understand. The direction was wrong. The response was failing. The car was no longer following the road. That was enough. His mind did not search for explanation. It moved directly to outcome, where the car was going, what it would hit, how fast it would get there. That is what mattered. Everything else became irrelevant. She felt it too, but differently. The loss of control created confusion first, then tension, then the beginning of awareness. Her body reacted, her hands adjusting, her posture tightening. her attention snapping toward the road as the reality of the situation began to form. But realization takes time, even if that time is only a fraction of a second. And in moments like this, that fraction is everything. He did not spend it, he used it. The car continued to move off path, its trajectory no longer correctable through normal input. The steering responded, but not enough. The correction came, but the alignment did not return. The distance ahead was closing, and the space for recovery had already disappeared. That is when realization becomes absolute. Not partial, not uncertain, but complete. This was going to happen. The impact was no longer a possibility. It was forming. And once that understanding locks in, the mind has only one function left: to act before it becomes irreversible. He did not look at the road. He did not need to. He looked at her, because that is where the outcome would be decided. Her position, her alignment with the trajectory, the way her body would absorb the force if nothing changed. That is what he calculated, not consciously, but instantly. The distance between realization and action collapsed. There was no separation, no delay, because he understood something critical. There would be no second moment, no chance to adjust after impact, no opportunity to correct once the collision began. Everything had to happen now, within this single second. The car surged forward, still uncontrolled, still moving within a path that no longer matched the road. The environment outside became irrelevant. The only space that mattered was the one inside the vehicle, because that is where the outcome would be determined. Her body remained in position, still aligned with the direction of force, still exposed, still unprotected in the exact way that would matter most. And that is what triggered the decision, not thought, not fear, but certainty, the kind that does not wait, the kind that does not question, the kind that acts because there is no alternative. The split second of realization ended, and in its place, something else took over. Action. Immediate. Unstoppable. The moment had been understood. Now it had to be changed. Everything about the moment said he should not be the one to act. Not because he lacked awareness, but because his body did not function in the way moments like this demand. Speed was required. Full mobility was expected. Explosive reaction was assumed. And he had none of those in the way people define them. His lower body remained unresponsive, disconnected from the kind of movement that most rely on instinctively. There would be no sudden step forward, no shift in stance, no repositioning through the legs that could stabilize, adjust, or absorb force. That option did not exist. And yet, the moment did not adjust for that. The car continued forward. The trajectory remained unchanged. The impact approached without slowing. The situation did not care what he could or could not do. It only responded to what would be done. And that is where everything shifted. Because limitation does not remove action. It changes how action happens. His body responded. Not through what was missing, but through what remained. His upper body moved first. Fast. Precise. Without hesitation. The motion was not large, but it was exact. His arms extended, his torso leaning forward with controlled force, his balance shifting in a way that compensated for what his lower body could not provide. The movement did not rely on speed alone. It relied on direction, and direction was everything. He did not try to stand. He did not try to reposition in a way that required what he no longer had. He used what was available. Every part of his body that could move aligned with a single objective. Change her position. That was it. Nothing else mattered. The force of the car's movement continued to build around them, the environment collapsing into a single point where impact would occur. The time remaining was almost gone. The margin for error no longer existed, and still his body moved. Against expectation, against assumption, against everything that defined him from the outside. Because in that moment, the body that should not move became the only one that did. His reach connected, not gently, not cautiously, but decisively. His hands found her, not in a random attempt, but with precision guided by awareness of where she was, where the force would travel, where the impact would land if nothing changed. He pulled, hard, not asking, not waiting, forcing movement into a moment that would not allow it naturally. Her body shifted, not completely, not perfectly, but enough. That is what mattered, because perfection was not required, only change. The car closed the final distance. The moment reached its peak, and everything depended on whether that movement had been enough. His body held the position, not relaxing, not releasing, maintaining the shift he had created, ensuring that the alignment would not return, that the outcome would not revert to what it had been seconds before. That is what defined the action. Not just the movement, but the continuation of it. Because in moments like this, one action is not enough. It has to be sustained until the moment ends. And the moment was ending. The body that should not move had already done what no one expected. Now, everything depended on what that movement had changed. There was no time to consider what was possible. No space to question what his body could handle. No moment to calculate risk in the way people normally do. Because in that second, the only thing that existed was outcome. An outcome does not wait for comfort. It demands action. The decision had already been made before it could be explained. Not through thought, but through certainty. The kind that forms when there is only one direction left. The car continued forward, its motion locked, its path unchanged, its speed still carrying it toward a point that had not yet been altered enough to guarantee safety. The force was coming, and it would not adjust. That is what made the decision absolute. Because when nothing outside can change, the only thing left to change is what is inside. He did not think about his condition. He did not consider limitation. He did not evaluate what he should or should not attempt, because those questions require time, and time did not exist. What he had was a single moment, and a single objective: move her. Everything else disappeared. Pain, effort, balance, all irrelevant, because the decision was not about what his body could endure. It was about what would happen if he did nothing, and that answer was already clear. The difference between acting and not acting had become too large to ignore, too final, too irreversible. So the decision overrode everything. His grip tightened. His body leaned further. His movement extended beyond what would normally be comfortable, beyond what would normally be attempted, pushing into a range that did not rely on habit, but on necessity. Because necessity removes limits, not physically, but mentally, and that is where action begins. She felt the shift, the pull, the sudden change in her position that did not come from her own decision, but from something stronger, something more urgent, something that did not wait for her to understand. Her body moved with it, not resisting, not correcting, because the force of the moment aligned her with the movement. The car closed in. The space between impact and avoidance now measured in the smallest fraction of time. There was no longer a possibility of adjusting again. No second attempt, no correction if this failed. This was the only action, and it had to be enough. His body held the position, not releasing, not reducing the force, maintaining the change he had created, locking it in place, ensuring that the alignment would not return even under the pressure of the moment. That is what made the decision complete. Not just choosing to act, but committing to it fully, without hesitation, without retreat, without leaving space for doubt to interfere. The car entered the space. The moment reached its final point, and everything depended on whether that decision had come at the exact second it needed to. Because once that second passes, nothing else matters. The decision that overrides condition had already been made. Now, the outcome would reveal what it had changed. It was not fast in the way people imagined speed. It was not explosive. It was not built on reflex alone. It was precise, focused, uninterrupted. The kind of movement that does not rely on how quickly it begins, but on how accurately it reaches its target. Because in that moment, accuracy mattered more than speed. His body had already committed. The decision had been made. Now, the execution had to match it perfectly. His arms held firm, his grip locked in place. His torso leaned forward with controlled force, maintaining the shift he had created. There was no wasted motion, no adjustment that did not serve a purpose. Every part of what remained available to him aligned with one objective: keep her out of the path. The car surged closer. The distance collapsed completely. There was no longer space between danger and contact, only position. And position had changed. That is what defined the movement, not how it looked. But what it altered, her body, no longer aligned with the direct line of impact, had been shifted just enough to move away from the center of force. Not completely out of danger, not entirely clear of risk, but no longer in the exact position that would absorb the full consequence. And that difference was everything. The car entered the space. Its motion carried through without hesitation, without deviation, following the path it had already committed to seconds before. The structure of the moment did not allow it to stop, did not allow it to correct, did not allow it to avoid. It passed through where she had been, not where she was now. The contact came, but not as it should have, not in the way that had been forming. The force grazed past, close, violent, but misaligned, because the movement had changed the point of impact. The difference between direct and indirect, between full force and reduced consequence, between irreversible and survivable. That is what no one expected, because the movement did not need to remove her completely from danger. It only needed to change how danger reached her. And it did. The car continued forward, its energy carrying beyond them, its path extending past the moment that had just been altered. The sound followed, sharp, immediate, then fading as distance returned. The moment ended, but the result remained. He held his position for a second longer, not out of hesitation, but to ensure that nothing reversed, that the shift he had created stayed intact, that the alignment did not return. Only then did the tension begin to release. Not completely, but enough, because the critical point had passed. The movement no one expected had already done what it needed to do. It had changed the outcome, not by stopping the danger, but by redirecting its effect. And that is what made it powerful. Because in moments where nothing can be stopped, the only thing left is to change how it happens. And he had done exactly that. The collision did not disappear. It passed, close enough to be felt, close enough to prove how real it had been. The car continued forward, its momentum carrying it through the space that had defined the moment seconds before. The force of its movement cut through the air, sharp, immediate, leaving behind a trace of what should have happened, but did not, because the alignment had been broken. That is what separated the outcome, not the absence of impact, but the difference in how it connected. The space where her body had been positioned was no longer occupied. The exact point where the force would have landed, where the full weight of the collision would have been absorbed, where everything would have changed irreversibly, had been left empty. The car passed through that space without resistance, without contact, without consequence for that position. But the moment was still violent, still real, still carrying the weight of what had almost occurred. The edge of the force reached them, not directly, but close. A glancing interaction, a reduced contact that carried movement but not devastation. Her body shifted slightly from the residual force, the energy transferring just enough to be felt, just enough to confirm that the danger had been real, just enough to show how narrow the margin had been. But it was not the same, not the full impact, not the outcome that had been forming seconds before, because the movement had changed it. The car moved past, its path continuing forward, its speed reducing only after the critical moment had already passed, its presence now extending away from the space where everything had been decided. The sound followed, then faded, leaving behind silence, not empty, but heavy. The kind of silence that carries realization, because now the moment could be understood. The distance, the timing, the impossibility of stopping in time, the certainty that if nothing had changed, the outcome would have been different. Completely, she remained where she had been pulled, her body still adjusting, her awareness catching up, her mind reconstructing the sequence, understanding what had just been avoided, not through absence, but through contrast. What happened, and what almost happened. The difference between those two realities existed within the smallest possible margin, and that margin had been created by him. He remained still for a second longer, not out of shock, but to confirm that the danger had passed, that the alignment would not return, that the moment was truly over. Only then did the tension begin to release, slowly, controlled, because even when the impact does not happen, the body feels what almost did. The car came to a stop further down the road, its motion finally reduced, its presence no longer immediate, but its role in the moment fully understood. It had not avoided them. It had followed its path exactly, and that is what made the outcome so precise, because nothing about the car had changed. Only the position had. The impact that almost happened remained, not as an event, but as a reality that had been redirected at the exact second it mattered. And that is what defined everything that followed. Nothing about the car changed. Its speed remained. Its direction held. Its path followed through exactly as it had been set the moment control was lost. That is what makes moments like this unforgiving. Because when external forces cannot be altered, the only variable that remains is position. And position is everything. He had not stopped the car. He had not slowed the impact. He had not removed the danger. He had changed alignment. That was the action. Simple in concept, absolute in consequence. The body, which had been directly in line with the trajectory, had been moved just enough to break that connection. Not completely out of reach, not entirely beyond danger, but no longer at the center of it. And that difference redefined the entire outcome. Because impact is not just about force, it is about where that force lands. The exact point of contact determines everything that follows. Direct alignment creates maximum consequence. A shift, even small, reduces it, changes it, redirects it. That is what he had done. Not by chance. Not by reaction alone, but by placing her body outside the most critical line of force at the exact second it mattered. The timing had been precise, not early, not late. Exactly within the moment where change was still possible. That precision is what made the action effective. Because too soon, and the alignment could return. Too late, and the alignment would already have completed. But it happened in between. In that narrow space where outcome is still flexible. The car passed. The force followed its path. But the connection had already been broken. The energy moved past instead of through. And that is what changed everything. She remained in a position that no longer matched the trajectory. The car continued into a space that no longer contained her. The two no longer intersected. And that is what defined survival. Not the absence of danger, but the absence of connection between danger and position. He maintained the hold for a moment longer, not because it was needed physically, but because it ensured that the alignment would not return, that the body would not shift back into risk, that the action would hold through the final fraction of the moment. Only when the car had fully passed did the tension release. Only then did the movement end, because the objective had been achieved. The alignment had been changed. The outcome had been redirected. And nothing else in that moment mattered more than that. The action that changed alignment did not stop what was coming. It made sure it no longer arrived in the same way. And that is why they survived. The car had already passed. The sound of it moving away faded into the distance, leaving behind something else entirely. Silence. Not the same silence that comes before something happens, but the silence that comes after something almost does. It filled the space around them, heavy, still, carrying the weight of a moment that had just been decided in the smallest fraction of time. Nothing moved immediately, not because they could not, but because their minds had not caught up. Her body remained where it had been pulled, slightly off balance, still adjusting to a position she had not chosen, still processing a force that had moved her without explanation. Her breathing changed first, deeper, uneven, responding to something she could now feel, but had not yet fully understood. The awareness came in layers. The sound, the movement, the closeness, the realization that something had passed through the exact space where she had been seconds before. That is when it formed, not gradually, but completely, what almost happened. She looked forward, then to the side, then at the road behind them, reconstructing the moment in reverse, understanding the path of the car, the impossibility of stopping, the precision of where it had been and where she had not been. And that difference was everything. But that and theirs, and that difference was everything, but that difference. Her body reacted to that realization, not through movement, but through stillness, because sometimes the body pauses when it understands how close it came to losing control completely. He remained where he was, his hands still holding the position they had created, his body still aligned with the action that had just ended. There was no immediate release, no sudden relaxation, no visible shift that signaled completion. Because for him, the moment had not been about what almost happened. It had been about what needed to be done. And now, it was done. The silence around them held that truth. No voices, no sudden reactions. Just the space between what had been avoided and what remained. The car stood further down the road now, its motion reduced, its presence distant, but its role in the moment still clear. It had not slowed in time. It had not corrected its path. It had followed through exactly as it would have. And that is what made the silence so heavy, because it confirmed something undeniable. Nothing outside had changed, only what he had done inside that moment. She turned toward him, slowly, not out of confusion, but out of understanding. Her eyes traced the position they had been in, the distance that had existed, the impossibility of reacting in time, and the only reason that had not mattered, him. The silence shifted, not breaking, but deepening, because now it carried recognition, not just of survival, but of how it had happened. He released his hold, carefully, not abruptly, ensuring that the position remained stable, that nothing reversed, that the outcome held even after the action ended. Only then did the moment fully settle. The silence after survival is never empty. It is filled with everything that almost was, and everything that now remains. No one would have predicted it. Not before the moment, not by looking at him, not by understanding his condition in the way most people do, because what people saw defined what they expected, and what they expected did not include this. They saw limitation, they saw restriction, they saw a body that did not move the way others do. And they translated that into absence. Absence of speed, absence of capability, absence of action in a moment that demands everything at once. That is how perception works. It fills in what it does not understand, and then it believes it, but the moment had already proven something different. Because strength is not always visible before it is used. It reveals itself when it is required. And in that second, it had. Not as force alone. Not as movement in the way people imagine it, but as precision, as timing. As the ability to act without hesitation, when hesitation would have ended everything. He had not stood. He had not run. He had not moved in a way that matched expectation. And yet, he had done exactly what the moment demanded. Because strength is not defined by what is missing. It is defined by what is used. His awareness had been sharper. His focus had been immediate. His decision had been absolute. And his action had followed without delay. That is strength. Not the kind that shows itself in preparation, but the kind that appears in necessity. She looked at him differently now, not because he had changed, but because her understanding had the same person, the same body, the same presence, but no longer defined by what she thought she knew, because what he had done replaced every assumption. Every limitation that had been placed on him from the outside had been broken in a single moment of action that could not be denied, could not be explained away, could not be reduced to chance. It was exact, it was intentional, it was necessary, and it had worked. The road behind them remained the same. The car still stood in the distance. The environment had not changed, but perception had completely. Because once you see what someone is capable of in a moment where everything is at risk, you cannot return to what you believed before. He remained calm, unchanged, not reacting to the realization the way others might. Because for him, the moment had not been about proving anything. It had been about doing what needed to be done. And now that it was done, nothing else mattered. That is what made it powerful. Because the strength no one saw coming had not needed recognition to exist. It had already defined the outcome. The moment was over. But what it revealed did not fade. The road returned to stillness. The car remained stopped in the distance. The environment looked exactly the same as it had before everything broke apart. Nothing in the outside world marked what had just happened. But everything had changed, because now there was clarity, not about the accident, but about him. He had not moved in the way people expect. He had not relied on what others would. He had not needed the abilities that define most reactions. And still, he had done exactly what the moment required. That is what remained, not the fear, not the shock, but the understanding. Strength is not always what people recognize before it is needed. It does not always appear in form, in speed, in visible capability. Sometimes it exists in awareness, in timing, in the refusal to hesitate when hesitation would end everything. He had seen what others had not yet processed. He had decided before doubt could form. He had acted within the only second that allowed change. And that is what made the difference. Not what he lacked, but what he used. The perception that had once defined him no longer held, because reality had replaced it completely. She stood beside him, no longer seeing limitation, no longer seeing restriction, no longer seeing absence, only outcome. Only the fact that she was standing there because of him, because of a movement that should not have been possible, because of a decision that did not wait, because of an action that arrived at the exact second it needed to. He did not react to it. He did not acknowledge it. Because for him, the moment had been simple. There was something that needed to be done. So he did it. That is what separates assumption from truth. Because assumption is built on what people think they know. Truth is revealed when it matters. And in that moment, truth had been undeniable. The man they believed was limited had become the only reason the outcome changed. And that is what stays. Because once a moment like that happens, it cannot be unseen. It cannot be reduced. It cannot be forgotten. It replaces everything that came before it. And that is why it matters. Because strength is not defined before the moment. It is defined in it. And when it appears, it does not ask to be believed. It proves itself completely.